Chapter 1: Vanishing in Moonlight. Special Agent Marcus Reed stared at the map of Yosemite National Park spread across the conference table. Red pins marking the last known locations of 12 missing visitors. The pattern was unmistakable. All disappearances had occurred during full moon nights over the past 6 months. "This isn't coincidence," he said, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. At 52, Marcus should have been planning his retirement, not leading a specialized search team into one of America's most famous national parks. But his background as both a former Army Ranger and the FBI's top wilderness tracker made him the only logical choice for this assignment. Park Ranger Diana Whitefeather nodded grimly. "Whatever's happening here goes beyond normal search and rescue scenarios. These people weren't amateurs. 3 were experienced rock climbers. 1 was a survival expert filming a documentary, and 1 was one of our own rangers with 15 years of experience." Diana, a member of the local Awanechi tribe who had grown up in the shadow of El Capitan, had spent her entire life in and around Yosemite. Her knowledge of the park's 1,200 square miles of wilderness was unparalleled. "And the 4 who were found?" Marcus asked, looking at the blue pins on the map. "That's where it gets strange," Diana replied, sliding a folder across the table. "Medically, they were fine. No physical injuries, no signs of dehydration or exposure. But psychologically," she paused, searching for words, "they were empty, like something had hollowed them out from the inside." Marcus opened the folder, scanning the psychiatric evaluations. Catatonic states, dissociative episodes, unexplained night terrors, and all of them repeating the same phrase: "The moon hunters have chosen." The team assembled in the ranger station represented various fields of expertise. Dr. Eliza Chen, a forensic psychiatrist from Quantico, was reviewing the medical reports. James Walker, a cryptozoologist whose presence Marcus had initially protested, was examining photos from trail cameras. Completing the team was Mike Thompson, a local guide whose family had lived in the area for generations. "The next full moon is in 3 days," Marcus announced, closing the folder. "Whatever's happening, we need to get ahead of it. Diana, you said your tribe has legends about this area." Diana hesitated, glancing at Mike, who gave her a subtle nod. "My grandmother used to speak of the night walkers, beings that walk as men during the day but reveal their true forms under the full moon." James perked up at this. "Wolf men, like the European werewolf myths?" "No," Diana replied firmly. "The night walkers are older than European contact. They're described as tall, upright predators with canine features, but they're not cursed humans. They're something else entirely, something that has always been here." "Dogmen," James whispered, earning an eye roll from Marcus. "Let's stick to facts," Marcus insisted. "Diana, can you take us to the areas with the highest concentration of disappearances? I want to look for tracks, evidence, anything tangible." Diana pointed to an area deep in the backcountry, miles from the popular tourist sites. "Here, the Forbidden Valley. It's not on most park maps, because the terrain is too dangerous for casual hikers." "Why is it called that?" Dr. Chen asked, speaking for the first time. Mike cleared his throat. "Because the first European settlers who ventured there never returned. The native guides refused to enter the valley, saying it belonged to those who walk between worlds." Marcus surveyed the team. "We leave at dawn. Pack for 3 days in difficult terrain." He fixed James with a stern look. "This is a missing persons investigation, not a hunt for mythical creatures. We follow evidence, not legends." The next morning, they set out under a sky turning from indigo to pale blue. The hiking was arduous, taking them far from established trails into increasingly wild country. By mid-afternoon, they had reached a ridge overlooking a narrow valley shrouded in mist, despite the warm day. "The Forbidden Valley," Diana announced, her voice unnaturally quiet. "The mist never fully clears, even in summer." Marcus studied the landscape through binoculars. "Those rock formations don't look natural." Rising from the valley floor were strange, pillar-like structures arranged in what appeared to be deliberate patterns. The mist swirled around them, occasionally revealing what looked like carvings on their surfaces. "They're not," Mike confirmed. "Local legend says they're older than human presence in this region. The Awanechi never claimed to have built them." As they descended into the valley, the temperature dropped noticeably. The team's breath fogged in the air, despite the July heat they'd left behind on the ridge. The mist clung to their clothes, cold and damp against their skin. Diana led them to a cave entrance partially hidden behind a waterfall. "This is where the last victim was headed, according to their hiking plan." Marcus switched on his tactical flashlight, revealing a passage that showed signs of both natural formation and deliberate carving. "Stay close," standard search pattern. The cave system was extensive, branching into multiple tunnels that sometimes narrowed to crawlspaces before opening into vast chambers. In one such chamber, Marcus's light caught something that made his blood run cold. "Everyone stop," he commanded, his voice echoing. He approached a far wall where hundreds of hand prints in various sizes were pressed into the stone. Some appeared fresh. "These are recent," he said, touching one that still held the slightest moisture, "within the last 24 hours. But it was what stood beneath the hand prints that truly disturbed him. A pile of personal effects. Watches, wedding rings, cameras, hiking boots, all neatly arranged as if in offering. "My God," Dr. Chen whispered, picking up a park ranger's badge. "This belongs to David Chen, the ranger who disappeared during May's full moon." Marcus knelt to examine a strange marking on the cave floor, a circular design with angular symbols arranged around it. The marking appeared to have been carved recently, the stone dust still visible. "Diana, do you recognize this?" he asked. The ranger's face had paled. "It's a lunar calendar. My grandmother had one similar to it." Her finger traced the symbol at the top of the circle. "This marks the full moon, tomorrow night." As if responding to her words, a low, rumbling growl echoed from deep within the cave system. It was unlike anything Marcus had ever heard. Not quite wolf, not quite bear, carrying harmonics that seemed to bypass the ear and vibrate directly in the bones. The team froze, instinctively huddling closer as Marcus drew his sidearm. "Nobody move," he breathed. In the silence that followed, they all heard it, the soft sound of padded feet on stone, moving with deliberate slowness. Not retreating from them, but coming closer. "We need to leave," Diana whispered urgently. "Now before nightfall." "What about the evidence?" James protested, gesturing at the arranged items. "Leave it," Marcus ordered, his instincts screaming danger. "We mark this location and return with proper backup." As they began a hasty retreat, Mike suddenly stopped, head tilted as if listening. "Do you hear that?" Beyond the soft footfalls, now multiplied and coming from several tunnels, a chorus of eerie, hollow voices had begun chanting in a language none of them recognized. The chanting grew louder, surrounding them, seeming to come from the very walls of the cave. "Run!" Marcus shouted, just as his flashlight illuminated a pair of reflective, amber eyes watching them from the darkness ahead. Chapter 2. Ancient Territory. Marcus led the frantic retreat through the winding cave passages, his tactical training taking over as he shepherded the team toward the entrance. The chanting grew louder behind them, punctuated by growls that seemed to come from multiple directions at once. "Left tunnel," Diana shouted, guiding them at a crucial junction. The dim light of day appeared ahead, a silver of hope as they scrambled over slick rocks. They burst from the cave into the misty valley, the afternoon sun filtering weakly through the perpetual haze. But their relief was short-lived. The mist was thicker now, reducing visibility to less than 20 feet in all directions. "Keep moving," Marcus ordered, checking that everyone had made it out. "Head for higher ground." They climbed the valley slope in tense silence, each listening for pursuit. Only when they reached the ridge above did Marcus allow them to stop and catch their breath. Below, the mist swirled unnaturally, concentrating around the cave entrance they'd fled. "What the hell was that?" Dr. Chen asked, her professional composure shaken. Mike was scanning the tree line nervously. "We need to make camp somewhere defensible before dark." Marcus nodded, checking his watch. 4 hours until sunset. "Diana, is there anywhere nearby that offers protection?" "There's an old fire lookout tower about 2 miles north," she replied. "It's been abandoned for decades but should still be structurally sound." As they hiked toward the lookout, James fell into step beside Marcus. "Those weren't animal eyes we saw," he said quietly. "The positioning was all wrong, too high off the ground for any quadrupedal predator in this region." "I know what I saw," Marcus replied tensely. "But I'm not jumping to cryptid conclusions." "Then what's your explanation for what's happening to these people?" James pressed. "The items in that cave were arranged deliberately." "That's not animal behavior." Before Marcus could respond, Mike called out from where he was walking point. "Tracks." The team gathered around a patch of soft earth where clear impressions were visible. Large, canine-like paw prints that suddenly transformed mid-stride into human footprints. The transition was abrupt and impossible. "This can't be real," Dr. Chen whispered, crouching to examine the prints more closely. "Someone's playing games," Marcus insisted, though uncertainty crept into his voice. "Making fake tracks to perpetuate local legends." Diana shook her head. "Who would go to this much trouble in a remote area rarely visited by tourists? And why?" "I've studied track hoaxes for 20 years, James said, taking photographs of the prints. "The pressure distribution on these is consistent throughout the transition. That's almost impossible to fake. Whatever made these changed form while walking. Or we're dealing with multiple perpetrators working together," Marcus countered, refusing to abandon rational explanation. They reached the fire lookout as the sun began its descent toward the jagged horizon of the Sierra Nevada. The old wooden structure rose 30 feet above the surrounding pines, offering commanding views of the valley below. Though weathered by decades of harsh mountain seasons, the tower still stood firm on its foundation. Inside, they found a single room with windows on all sides. Dust covered the few remaining pieces of furniture: a desk, a chair, a cot frame with no mattress, and rusted filing cabinets. Messages and dates had been carved into the wooden walls by generations of rangers. "We'll take shifts keeping watch tonight," Marcus decided. "2 people awake at all times. I'll take first watch with Diana." As Dr. Chen, James, and Mike arranged their sleeping bags and prepared a cold dinner, Marcus had forbidden fires. Diana called Marcus to the north-facing window. "Look," she said, pointing to the valley below. In the gathering darkness, pinpricks of light had appeared among the trees, dozens of them, moving in what appeared to be coordinated patterns. "Flashlights," Marcus suggested, though he knew no search parties had been deployed to this area. "They're moving too erratically," Diana replied. "And they're the wrong color, more amber than white." As the last light faded from the sky, the full moon rose, casting a silvery glow across the landscape. The moving lights in the valley suddenly extinguished, as if responding to the moonrise. Then came the howls, not the familiar calls of wolves or coyotes, but something deeper, more guttural, with harmonics that made the hair on the back of Marcus's neck stand on end. The howls were answered from multiple directions, creating a chorus that echoed through the valley. "That's no animal I've ever heard," Mike whispered, now fully awake and standing at another window. Diana was visibly trembling. My grandmother would tell stories. She said when the night walkers gather in numbers, they prepare for a hunt. A hunt for what? Dr. Chen asked. Diana's eyes reflected the moonlight. For those they have chosen. Throughout the night, they watched as shapes moved through the forest below, tall, bipedal figures that seemed to flicker in and out of visibility. Occasionally, one would stop and look up toward the tower, its eyes reflecting the moonlight like golden lamps. Near midnight, the radio Marcus had been trying to contact park headquarters with suddenly crackled to life. Through bursts of static, a voice spoke, not from park rangers but something else entirely. The words were distorted but clearly English. "We know, you are here. We have always known." Marcus shut off the radio, his hand uncharacteristically unsteady. "Equipment malfunction," he said, though no one believed him. In the early hours before dawn, while Dr. Chen and Mike were on watch, they spotted a lone figure standing at the base of the tower. Unlike the shapes they'd glimpsed moving through the trees, this one made no attempt to hide. "Marcus," Dr. Chen called quietly, "you need to see this." The team gathered at the windows, looking down at the solitary figure. In the moonlight, they could make out the form of a park ranger, complete with uniform and hat. "That's David Chen," Diana gasped, recognizing the missing ranger. "The one whose badge we found." "David," Dr. Chen called out, moving toward the stairs. Marcus grabbed her arm. "Wait, something's not right." The figure below tilted its head at an unnatural angle, regarding the tower with eyes that reflected the moonlight too brightly for a human. When it finally spoke, its voice carried clearly through the night air, despite being little more than a whisper. "Join us," it said, in a voice that was David's yet somehow not. "They have awaited you, the Ancient Ones, the first guardians of this valley." "What happened to you, David?" Diana called out. The figure smiled, revealing teeth too sharp, too numerous. "I have been improved, as you will be. The pact must be honored." The sacrifice continued. "What pact?" Marcus demanded. The figure below began to change, its form elongating, shoulders broadening, face extending forward into a muzzle. The transformation was fluid, the ranger's uniform splitting at the seams as the creature's mass increased. "The pact made by your government when this land was first claimed." The thing that had been David answered, its voice deepening to a growl. "This territory has always belonged to the Night Walkers. Your national park exists because we allow it." Now fully transformed, the creature stood at least 8 feet tall, its body covered in dark fur, its face a nightmarish blend of wolf and human features. It dropped to all fours, then rose again to its hind legs in a fluid motion that defied natural movement. "Each full moon, we take what is owed," it continued. "Those who enter our sacred hunting grounds during the moon time are ours by ancient right. Your authorities have always known this. Why do you think certain areas remain restricted, despite no official danger?" The creature turned its massive head toward the eastern horizon, where the faintest lightning signaled approaching dawn. "The night ends, but we will return. You have until the moon rises again to leave our territory, or join those who have been chosen." As the first ray of sun crested the mountains, the creature let out a bone-chilling howl before loping into the forest with impossible speed. Within seconds, it had vanished among the trees. The team stood in shocked silence as daylight gradually filled the lookout tower. Finally, Marcus spoke, his voice hoarse. "We need to get back to headquarters and report what we've seen." "Report what exactly?" James asked. "That we encountered mythological creatures that claim to have a secret arrangement with the U.S. government. That missing persons are being sacrificed to appease these creatures." "We report the facts," Marcus insisted. "The cave, the arranged personal items, the tracks. Let the higher-ups draw their own conclusions." As they packed up to leave, Dr. Chen discovered something tucked into her backpack, David Chen's ranger badge, which they had left behind in the cave. Attached to it was a yellowed piece of paper that appeared to be torn from an official document. The visible letterhead read, Department of the Interior Classified Agreement, dated 1890, the year Yosemite was established as a national park. The visible text was brief but chilling. Monthly tribute shall be facilitated through designated, restricted areas, to remain unmarked on public maps, in exchange for territorial concessions and non-interference with park operations outside sacred hunting grounds. "My God," Diana whispered. "It's true, there really is a pact." Marcus took the paper with a trembling hand. "We need to move, now, before nightfall." As they descended from the lookout, each lost in their own thoughts, none of them noticed the shadows that moved just beyond their peripheral vision, keeping pace, watching, waiting for the moon to rise again. Chapter 3: The Secret Pact. The team moved quickly through the forest, following Diana's lead toward the ranger station. The morning sun had burned away much of the mist, but Marcus couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. Every shadow between the trees seemed to hide observant eyes. Every rustle of leaves carried whispered warnings. "We need to move faster," he urged, checking his watch. 10 hours until sunset. Mike suddenly stopped, holding up his hand for silence. "Listen," he whispered. In the distance they could hear voices calling, human voices, shouting what sounded like their names. "A search party," Dr. Chen suggested hopefully. "Park protocol says no search teams in this area without explicit authorization," Diana replied, her expression troubled. "And I didn't radio our location." Marcus drew his sidearm. "Stay together. Move quietly." They advanced cautiously toward the voices, which seemed to be coming from a clearing ahead. As they approached, they caught glimpses of figures moving among the trees, people in hiking clothes and ranger uniforms, calling out in friendly tones. "Marcus, Diana, we've been looking for you." James grabbed Marcus's arm. "Those are the missing people," he hissed. "I recognize them from the case files." Through the trees, they could now clearly see several of the missing hikers and the ranger they'd encountered the previous night, all appearing perfectly normal in the daylight. They waved and smiled, beckoning the team forward. "It's a trap," Diana whispered. "The night walkers can appear human during the day." Marcus nodded grimly. "Cut east. There's a river a half-mile that way. We can follow it down to the main road." They retreated quietly, then broke into a run once they were out of sight of the clearing. Behind them, the friendly calls transformed into inhuman howls of rage. The pursuit had begun. The team reached the river, a swift, cold mountain stream cutting through a rocky gorge. They splashed across at a shallow ford, hoping the water would mask their scent. "This way," Diana directed, leading them along a narrow game trail that paralleled the river. "There's an old ranger outpost about 2 miles downstream." As they hurried along the path, Dr. Chen pulled the yellowed document fragment from her pocket. "This agreement," she said between breaths, "if it's genuine, it suggests the government has known about these creatures for over a century, and has been feeding them visitors," Mike added darkly. "Not actively feeding," James corrected, "but deliberately leaving certain areas unmonitored during full moons, knowing what would happen. Passive sacrifice." Marcus, who had been silent, finally spoke. "The restricted areas shift every few years according to park management plans. Always explained away as environmental protection or hazardous terrain." "You knew?" Diana asked, shock evident in her voice. "No," Marcus replied firmly. "But I've worked enough federal cases to recognize the pattern now that I see it. Plausible deniability built into official policy." They reached the outpost by mid-afternoon, a small log cabin used seasonally by backcountry rangers. It was locked, but Marcus quickly bypassed the simple padlock. Inside, they found basic emergency supplies, a radio, and maps of the park far more detailed than those available to the public. Dr. Chen immediately went to the radio, attempting to contact park headquarters while Marcus examined the maps. His expression grew increasingly troubled as he compared them with standard visitor maps. "The restricted areas aren't just unmarked on public maps," he said. "They're deliberately mislabeled. This whole valley is shown as impassable terrain on tourist maps, but according to these ranger maps, there are clear trails throughout." Diana joined him at the table. "They're funneling specific types of visitors into the hunting grounds," she said, her voice hollow with realization. "Look at the trail designations challenging. For experienced hikers only, best views at full moon." The radio crackled suddenly as Dr. Chen established contact. "Yosemite Station, this is Dr. Eliza Chen with the Special Investigative Team. We have an emergency situation." "Over." After a moment of static, a calm voice responded. "Dr. Chen, this is Deputy Superintendent Warren. We've been concerned about your team. What's your situation?" Dr. Chen glanced at Marcus, who nodded for her to continue. "We've encountered hostile entities in the Forbidden Valley. We have evidence of a potential conspiracy involving park management and the disappearances, requesting immediate evacuation and federal oversight." A long pause followed. When Warren's voice returned, it had lost its warmth. "Dr. Chen, your team appears to be suffering from environmental hallucinations, possibly caused by natural gas pockets in the cave systems you were investigating. Stay put. A medical team is being dispatched to your location." "How did he know we were in caves?" James whispered. "We never mentioned that." Marcus took the radio. "Deputy Warren, this is Special Agent Reed. We have documentary evidence of a classified agreement between the Department of the Interior and entities inhabiting restricted areas of the park. We are invoking Federal Protocol Omega-79. Another long pause. When Warren responded, his tone had changed completely. "Authentication code required, Agent Reed." Marcus recited a lengthy alphanumeric sequence from memory. "An emergency authentication code known only to certain federal agents." "Authentication accepted," Warren replied mechanically. "Protocol Omega-79 acknowledged. You are ordered to destroy all evidence and return to headquarters for immediate debriefing. Failure to comply will result in disavowal and termination of federal protection. A cleanup team has been dispatched to your location. ETA 70 minutes. The radio went dead. Marcus slammed his fist on the table. "Damn it! What's Protocol Omega-79? Diana demanded. "Classification of supernatural encounter with existing containment protocol," Marcus answered, running his hands through his hair. "It means they know exactly what's out there, and they have a system in place for dealing with witnesses." "Dealing with," Mike echoed. "You mean silencing." "The cleanup team won't be coming to rescue us," James realized. "They're coming to eliminate all evidence, including us." Marcus checked his watch. 3 hours until sunset. The night walkers will be hunting us after dark, and the cleanup team will be here before then. We're caught between two predators. Dr. Chen had been examining the cabin more carefully. "Look at this," she called, pointing to what appeared to be a trapdoor in the floor, hidden under a rug. They pulled back the rug to reveal a heavy wooden door with an iron ring. Marcus and Mike heaved it open, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. "What is this?" Dr. Chen asked, as Marcus directed his flashlight into the opening. "Escape tunnel," Diana answered. "Many of the old ranger outposts have them, for forest fires or other emergencies." The beam of light revealed a narrow, earthen tunnel supported by wooden beams. It appeared to extend for some distance before curving out of sight. "Where does it lead?" James asked. Diana studied the detailed ranger map. According to this, it should come out near Mirror Lake, about 3 miles from here. From there, we can reach the main park road. We need to move, Marcus decided. Take only essential supplies and documents. The tunnel may be our only chance to escape both threats. As they gathered their gear, Mike discovered a locked cabinet beneath a desk. Breaking it open, they found a cache of weapons, shotguns, rifles, and ammunition. Park rangers don't carry this kind of firepower, Diana observed, lifting a heavy shotgun from the cabinet. These aren't for rangers, Marcus replied grimly. They're for cleanup teams, or last resorts against what's out there. They armed themselves, then descended one by one into the tunnel. Marcus went last, pulling the trapdoor closed above them. The darkness was nearly absolute, broken only by their flashlight beams. The air was damp and cool, with the earthy smell of soil and rotting wood. "Stay close," Marcus ordered as they began moving through the narrow passage. "And stay quiet." The tunnel was barely 6 feet high, forcing the taller members of the team to stoop. In places, the wooden supports had partially collapsed, requiring them to squeeze through tight spaces. It was clear the passage hadn't been used in years. After nearly a half-hour of tense progress, they reached an intersection where the tunnel branched in 3 directions. "This isn't on the map," Diana said, examining the ranger documents by flashlight. Marcus studied the 3 passages. Each looked identical, rough-hewn tunnels disappearing into darkness. "We need to pick one," he said, aware that time was ticking away. Before anyone could respond, they heard it, a distant scraping sound from the passage behind them. Something was in the tunnel, following their trail. "Move," Marcus urged, choosing the middle passage. "Now." They hurried forward, no longer concerned about noise. The scraping behind them grew louder, accompanied by the sound of something large moving through the confined space. The tunnel began to slope upward, and soon they could see a faint light ahead, the exit. They emerged into the fading daylight beside a small, serene lake surrounded by towering pines. The sun was setting, painting the sky in dramatic reds and purples. "Mirror Lake," Diana confirmed, recognizing their location. "The road is about a mile that way." As they caught their breath, a rumbling growl emanated from the tunnel behind them. A large, dark shape was visible just inside the opening, a shape too large to squeeze through. "Run!" Marcus shouted, as a clawed hand reached out from the darkness. They sprinted away from the lake, heading toward the road and civilization. Behind them, the growls turned to howls of frustration, then silence. The creature had retreated back into the tunnel. "Why isn't it following?" Dr. Chen gasped as they slowed to catch their breath. "We're not in their territory anymore," James suggested. "We've crossed some boundary." Marcus checked the time. "The sun's almost down. We need to reach the road before full dark." They hurried through the gathering dusk, the forest growing more ominous with each passing minute. Twice, they thought they heard vehicles on the park roads, but held back, unsure whether they belonged to regular rangers or the cleanup team. As the last light faded from the sky, they reached the edge of a paved road. A sign indicated they were 5 miles from the Yosemite Valley Visitor Center. "We made it," Mike said, relief evident in his voice. Marcus shook his head. "We're not safe yet. The cleanup team will be monitoring all park exits." "So what's our plan?" Diana asked. "We need to get the evidence out of the park," Marcus replied. "Get it to someone with enough authority to expose this. Not just the creatures, but the government's role in covering up the disappearances." In the distance, they could hear vehicles approaching, multiple engines moving fast. "Cleanup team," Marcus said grimly, leading them into the cover of trees beside the road. "We need to split up. Diana, you know the park better than anyone. Can you get Dr. Chen and the document to the east entrance?" Diana nodded. There's a service road that bypasses the main checkpoints. But what about you? James, Mike, and I will create a diversion, Marcus explained. Make them think we still have the evidence. As the vehicles drew closer, they could see the distinctive light bars of Park Ranger. Those aren't regular rangers, Diana whispered. Look at the tactical gear. Through the trees, they could make out black-clad figures with assault rifles directing powerful spotlights into the forest. Marcus handed Diana his sat phone. Call this number once you're clear of the park. It's a contact at the FBI I trust. Tell him everything. Diana and Dr. Chen slipped away into the darkness, heading east through the forest, while Marcus, James, and Mike prepared to move in the opposite direction. Ready? Marcus asked, checking his borrowed shotgun. The other two men nodded, their faces grim in the moonlight that now filtered through the trees. As they prepared to make their move, a new sound rose from the forest behind them, a chorus of howls, closer than seemed possible. The night walkers had found them after all. Marcus looked up at the full moon rising above the trees. They're coming, both of them. With enemies closing in from all sides, they stepped out onto the road, directly into the approaching headlights. Chapter 4: The Hunt. The convoy of black SUVs screeched to a halt, their headlights illuminating Marcus, James, and Mike standing defiantly in the middle of the road. Doors flew open, and men in tactical gear poured out, weapons trained on the three. Federal agents, on the ground now, shouted a commander, his face obscured by a balaclava. Marcus kept his shotgun pointed downward but didn't drop it. FBI Special Agent Marcus Reed. I'm invoking whistleblower protection under federal statute. There are no whistleblowers in Protocol Omega-79, Agent Reed, the commander replied coldly. Last chance. Surrender all evidence and submit to debriefing. Behind them, the howls grew closer, echoing through the forest. Several of the tactical team nervously glanced toward the tree line. You know what's out there, Marcus called out. You know what's coming. How many of your men have you told the truth? The commander raised his hand to order his team forward. When the first of the night walkers emerged from the trees behind Marcus's group, standing nearly 8 feet tall, it paused at the forest edge, amber eyes reflecting the headlights. 2 more appeared beside it, followed by others, until a dozen massive shapes formed a semicircle at the tree line. Hold position, the commander ordered his men, who had turned their weapons toward the creatures. Do not engage the assets. Assets, James repeated incredulously. Is that what you call them? One of the night walkers stepped forward, the transformed ranger they had encountered earlier. When it spoke, its guttural voice carried easily across the standoff. The agreement has been broken, it growled. Your people entered our hunting grounds, then fled with knowledge forbidden to outsiders. The pact requires blood. The cleanup team commander lowered his weapon slightly. The situation is under control, he called to the creature. These trespassers will be processed according to protocol. The night walker tilted its massive head. Your protocols mean nothing to us. The hunt has begun. The moon is full. We claim what is ours. Without warning, the creatures surged forward, moving with terrifying speed. Marcus shoved James and Mike toward the ditch beside the road. Run, he shouted as chaos erupted. The cleanup team opened fire, the muzzle flashes illuminating the night as bullets tore into the charging night walkers. The creatures barely slowed, absorbing the impacts as they fell upon the armed men. Screams filled the air, punctuated by bestial roars and the wet sounds of rending flesh. Marcus, James, and Mike used the chaos to escape into the forest on the opposite side of the road, away from the main pack of night walkers. They sprinted through the trees, branches whipping at their faces, the sounds of combat fading behind them. Which way? James gasped as they paused briefly to orient themselves. East, Marcus replied, checking his compass. We need to catch up with Diana and Dr. Chen before the rest of the cleanup team does. They pushed deeper into the forest, guided only by moonlight filtering through the canopy. After about 20 minutes, they heard engines revving in the distance, more vehicles arriving at the scene of the massacre. "They're bringing reinforcements," Mike observed grimly. "Not reinforcements," Marcus corrected. "Containment teams. They'll seal off the entire area, create a cover story about a bear attack or environmental hazard." They continued moving through the darkened forest, using ranger trails that wound through the rugged terrain. The night was eerily quiet now, the earlier howls silenced. Somehow this was more unnerving than the chaos they'd fled. "Why aren't they pursuing us?" James asked, voicing everyone's concern. "They're hunting," Mike replied softly. "And we're not the only prey tonight." The implication hung in the air. Diana and Dr. Chen were out there too, possibly being tracked by the night walkers. Marcus increased their pace, pushing through exhaustion. An hour later, they reached a small ridge overlooking a narrow valley. In the distance, they could see vehicle lights moving along the park's eastern access road, multiple sets, converging toward the exit. "That's the service road Diana mentioned," Marcus said, pointing. "They're setting up a blockade." James raised his night vision binoculars, scanning the area. "I count 4 vehicles at the checkpoint, heavily armed personnel." "Can we go around?" Mike asked. Marcus studied the terrain. "Maybe. There's a maintenance tunnel that runs under the ridge about a half-mile north. It was built during the dam construction in the 70s. "How do you know all this?" James asked suspiciously. "I memorized the complete infrastructure map of Yosemite before we came," Marcus replied matter-of-factly. "Standard protocol for high-risk operations." They made their way toward the tunnel entrance, moving carefully across the exposed hillside. The moon was high now, bathing the landscape in cold silver light that offered little concealment. As they approached the tunnel, a dark opening in the rocky hillside secured by a rusted gate, a figure emerged from the shadows ahead. Marcus raised his shotgun, then lowered it as he recognized Diana. "Where's Dr. Chen?" he asked immediately, noting her absence. Diana's face was streaked with dirt and what looked like blood. "They took her," she said, her voice hollow. "The cleanup team intercepted us near Mirror Lake. We split up. I doubled back, but I saw them loading her into a vehicle." "And the document," Marcus pressed. Diana patted her pocket. "I still have it. She insisted I take it before we separated." Mike was examining the tunnel entrance. "The lock's been cut recently," he observed, pointing to the fresh marks on the metal. Marcus frowned. "Recently as in?" "Within the hour," Mike confirmed. They exchanged worried glances. Someone had passed through here not long before they arrived. "We don't have a choice," Marcus decided. "The roadblock ahead is our only way out of the park." They entered the tunnel, flashlights illuminating a concrete passage that stretched into darkness. The air was damp and cool, smelling of mineral deposits and stagnant water. Their footsteps echoed eerily as they advanced. "What happens to Dr. Chen?" Diana asked quietly as they walked. Marcus's expression was grim. "Best case, memory alteration, drugs, hypnosis, psychological manipulation to make her forget or doubt what she's seen. Worst case, she disappears permanently, becomes another statistic." "Like the missing hikers," James added. "No," Marcus corrected. "The hikers were taken by the night walkers as part of the agreement. People who learn too much about the agreement itself are handled differently." "How long has this been going on?" Mike wondered aloud. "The document was from 1890, but these creatures must have been here much longer. The Awanechi legends go back countless generations," Diana replied. "My grandmother said the night walkers were here before humans, that they allowed people to live in the valley as long as certain areas remained their exclusive territory." When white settlers arrived and wanted to create a national park, they made a more formal arrangement, Marcus theorized. Designated sacrifice zones in exchange for leaving the main tourist areas alone. They had progressed about halfway through the tunnel when James, who was leading, suddenly stopped. "Listen," he whispered. Ahead they could hear the soft sound of padded feet moving purposefully toward them. Behind, similar sounds echoed. They were trapped between approaching threats. "Kill the lights," Marcus ordered, and they plunged into total darkness. In the blackness, other senses heightened. They could hear breathing, not their own, from both directions. A subtle scent filled the air, musky and wild, like wet fur and something else, something ancient. They herded us here, Diana realized. Like animals into a trap. A low, rumbling growl confirmed her assessment. It came from directly ahead, impossibly close. In the darkness, amber eyes suddenly appeared, floating at a height well above a human's. Marcus slowly raised his shotgun, knowing it would likely be useless. The moment stretched, taut with tension, neither side moving. Then, unexpectedly, a voice spoke, not the guttural growl of the night walkers, but a human voice, aged and weathered. "Lower your weapon, Agent Reed. If we wanted you dead, you wouldn't still be breathing." A flashlight clicked on, revealing an elderly Native American man standing beside one of the night walkers. The creature towered over him, yet seemed deferential, almost protective. "My name is Joseph Whitefeather," the old man continued. "Diana's grandfather." Diana gasped. "Grandfather how?" "They told us you died years ago." The old man smiled sadly. "In a way, I did. I became something else, a bridge between worlds, a keeper of the true pact." "True pact?" Marcus questioned, not lowering his shotgun. "What do you mean?" Joseph gestured for them to follow. "Come, we don't have much time. The government's servants are closing in and they cannot find us together." Against all instinct, Marcus found himself lowering his weapon. There was something in the old man's eyes, a depth of knowledge, a hint of otherworldly awareness that compelled trust. They followed Joseph and the night walker deeper into the tunnel, eventually reaching a hidden side passage that opened into a large, natural cave. Inside, more night walkers waited, along with several normal-looking humans of various ages. Sitting among them, apparently unharmed though visibly shaken, was Dr. Chen. "Eliza!" Diana rushed forward to embrace her colleague. Joseph took a seat on a stone that resembled a throne, the largest of the night walkers standing sentinel beside him. "Now," he said, his voice echoing in the cavern, "it's time you learned the truth. About the night walkers, about Yosemite, and about the bargain that was broken long before you ever set foot in the Forbidden Valley." As the group gathered around the old man, the night walkers formed a protective circle, their amber eyes focused on the tunnel entrance, watching for approaching danger. From outside came the distant sound of helicopter rotors. The hunt was intensifying above ground. "The story begins," Joseph said, "thousands of years before this land had a name, when the night walkers first allowed humans to share their territory, and the price they demanded for that privilege." Chapter 5. Ancient Guardians. Joseph Whitefeather's weathered hands traced patterns in the air as he spoke, his voice resonating with the timbre of ancient storytelling. "The night walkers were not always as you see them now," he began. "In the oldest times, they were guardians of the balance between worlds, the seen and unseen, the physical and spiritual. They kept watch over doorways that existed in certain places where the veil between realities grew thin. The cave fell silent except for Joseph's voice and the distant sound of search helicopters overhead. Even the night walkers had grown still, their amber eyes reflecting the firelight. Yosemite Valley is not merely a beautiful place," Joseph continued. "It is a nexus, a convergence of energies that flow through the earth itself. The great rock formations, the waterfalls, the ancient trees. They form a natural seal over something far older and more powerful than humanity can comprehend. Dr. Chen leaned forward. What's beneath the valley? Joseph's expression grew grave. The ancients called it the devourer of worlds, an entity that sleeps beneath the mountains. If awakened, it would consume all it touches, spreading outward like a cancer in the earth. The night walkers have been its jailers since before humankind walked upright. Marcus exchanged glances with James, skepticism evident in their expressions. But they remained silent as Joseph continued. My ancestors understood this truth. They made a covenant with the night walkers. Human guardians would join the watch, learning the ways of maintaining the seals, while giving the night walkers dominion over certain sacred territories. In return, the night walkers would protect humanity from what slumbered below. And this arrangement worked for thousands of years, Diana surmised, until European settlers arrived. Joseph nodded. The newcomers saw only land to be claimed, resources to be exploited. They drove my people from the valley, breaking the ancient covenant. The night walkers retreated to the shadows, but their duty remained. Without human partners in the guardianship, they were forced to find alternative means of maintaining the balance. The sacrifices, Marcus said quietly. Not sacrifices as you understand them, Joseph corrected. The night walkers do not kill for pleasure or sustenance. Those they take are transformed, integrated into the collective consciousness that maintains the seals. Each full moon, the energy must be renewed, the barriers strengthened. Mike, who had been silent until now, spoke up. But the government knew. They made a new agreement. Joseph's face darkened. In 1890, a survey team ventured into the forbidden territories. Most never returned. Those who did spoke of wolfmen and demons. A special commission was sent to investigate, men who specialized in the unexplained. They discovered part of the truth, enough to recognize the danger. He gestured to one of the humans sitting among the night walkers, a middle-aged man in a park ranger uniform, who had been watching them with unnaturally steady eyes. This is Thomas Griffith, great-grandson of Senator William Griffith, who led that commission. His family has served as intermediaries for generations. Thomas nodded solemnly. The original agreement was made with good intentions, to protect the public while preserving the night walkers' sacred duty. Certain areas would remain restricted, with the understanding that those who willfully entered during full moons were ceding themselves to the greater purpose. But it corrupted over time, Joseph continued. Government agencies began to use the forbidden zones for their own ends, disposing of inconvenient people, conducting secret operations under the cover of wilderness hazards. The night walkers tolerated this because they still received what they needed to maintain the seals, but the balance was shifting. And now, Dr. Chen asked. Now the balance is failing, Joseph replied gravely. The human world pushes ever further into the wild places. Climate change, development, millions of tourists, all strain the ancient boundaries. The entity below stirs in its sleep. A tremor ran through the cavern, subtle but unmistakable. Dust filtered down from the ceiling. That wasn't a natural earthquake, Diana whispered. No, Joseph agreed. The seals are weakening. The night walkers grow desperate, taking more than the agreement permits. And the government's cleanup teams have begun hunting them in retaliation, not understanding they're undermining humanity's only protection. Marcus had been processing everything, his analytical mind searching for connections. The missing hikers, the ones found catatonic, they rejected the transformation somehow. Joseph nodded. Not everyone can be integrated into the collective. Some minds resist, and they must be returned, though never fully whole. A night walker approached, this one smaller than the others, moving with a fluid grace that seemed almost familiar. It stopped before Diana, amber eyes studying her intently. "This one remembers you," Joseph said softly, "before the change." Diana's hand trembled as she reached toward the creature. "Maya, my college roommate, who disappeared 5 years ago during our hiking trip." The night walker made a sound, not quite human, not quite animal, but somehow conveying recognition. It gently took Diana's hand in its massive paw, the deadly claws carefully retracted. "She chose this," Joseph explained. "When she learned the truth, she offered herself to strengthen the guardianship. She has been watching over you ever since." Tears streaked Diana's face as she gazed at her transformed friend. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Would you have understood?" Joseph asked. "Could any human truly comprehend this choice without seeing the necessity firsthand?" Another tremor shook the cavern, stronger this time. Small rocks dislodged from the ceiling, clattering to the floor. "We're running out of time," Thomas said urgently. "The cleanup team has deployed seismic charges to flush us out. They don't realize what they're disturbing." Joseph rose from his stone seat, suddenly looking every one of his 80-plus years. "The document you carry, Diana, it is more than evidence of a government conspiracy. It contains encoded knowledge, passed down through generations of guardians. With it, we can perform the ritual to reinforce the weakening seals, but we must reach the central nexus point." "Where is that?" Marcus asked. "Beneath Yosemite Falls," Joseph replied, "in a cave system unknown to modern maps." "The cleanup team has the entire park locked down," James pointed out. "How do we get there?" Joseph smiled thinly. "The night walkers know paths that no human has walked for centuries. But we'll need protection. Your weapons will help against the cleanup team, while our strength will defend against what may emerge from below if the seals continue to weaken." Marcus weighed their options. Everything in his FBI training told him this was madness. Ancient entities, mystical seals, wolfmen guardians. Yet he had seen enough to know that conventional explanations had failed. "If we help you reach this nexus point and reinforce the seals," he asked, "what happens then? The disappearances continue. The government keeps covering it up." Joseph exchanged glances with Thomas. "That is why you were brought here, Agent Reed. We need more than your immediate help. We need to forge a new covenant. One that honors the ancient responsibilities without the secrecy and corruption that has poisoned the current arrangement." "A new agreement," Dr. Chen murmured. "Between whom?" "Between all the guardians," Joseph replied. "Human and night walker alike. Transparency within a circle of trust, rather than exploitation hidden by government classification." A night walker that appeared to be one of the leaders approached Marcus, extending a clawed hand in a surprisingly human gesture. "Choose," it growled, the word heavy with meaning. Marcus understood the gravity of the moment. His decision would affect not just their immediate survival but potentially the safety of countless others. If Joseph's story was true, the consequences of refusal were unthinkable. He reached out and clasped the creature's hand. "I'm in. But I want your word that no more innocent visitors will be taken." Joseph translated the series of growls that followed. "They agree to this. Only willing participants will join the guardianship. In exchange, humans must ensure the sacred territories remain truly protected, not just designated as restricted on paper maps." The agreement sealed, they prepared to move. The night walkers distributed themselves among the humans, forming a protective escort. Joseph explained the route they would take, ancient tunnels that ran deep beneath the park, emerging near the base of Yosemite Falls. As they entered the tunnel network, Marcus found himself walking alongside Thomas. "How many others know about all this?" he asked quietly. "A handful in each administration," Thomas replied. "The park superintendent, certain officials in the Department of the Interior, a special division within the FBI that you've never been cleared for. He glanced at Marcus. Your career is over after this, you know. Best case scenario, forced retirement with a gag order. Marcus nodded grimly. I figured as much. What about Diana and the others? That depends on how the new agreement shapes up, Thomas said. We've needed fresh perspectives for a long time. The old guard has become too comfortable with the status quo. They walked for nearly an hour through the maze-like tunnels, the night walkers navigating with ease despite the darkness. Occasionally, they would hear distant explosions or feel vibrations through the rock. The cleanup teams continued efforts to find them. Finally, they emerged into a massive cavern behind Yosemite Falls. The roar of the waterfall was deafening, yet somehow muffled by the strange acoustics of the space. In the center of the cavern stood a formation of stones arranged in a perfect circle, each carved with symbols similar to those they had seen in the cave. The nexus point, Joseph announced, his voice carrying despite the noise of the falls. As they approached the stone circle, the ground began to shake continuously. Cracks appeared in the cavern floor, emitting an eerie blue luminescence and a smell like ozone and decay. It's waking, Joseph said urgently. Diana, the document. Diana produced the yellowed paper, which Joseph took reverently. He began to chant in a language none of them recognized, while the night walkers formed a circle around the stone formation, linking hands with the humans to complete the circuit. Marcus found himself between one of the creatures and Dr. Chen, their hands forming a chain of unlikely allies. The energy in the cavern was palpable now, raising the hair on his arms and creating static discharges that danced across the stone circle. Joseph placed the document at the center of the formation, where it began to glow with the same blue light emanating from the cracks. The chanting grew louder, the night walkers adding their voices in a harmonic counterpoint that seemed to resonate with the very rocks around them. Suddenly, the cavern entrance exploded inward as cleanup team members breached their sanctuary. Armed men poured in, weapons raised. "Federal agents, cease all activity immediately," shouted a familiar voice. Deputy Superintendent Warren, now dressed in tactical gear rather than his park ranger uniform. The night walkers tensed, ready to break the circle and defend the ritual, but Joseph shouted for everyone to maintain their positions. "The seal is reforming. We cannot break the connection now." Warren advanced with his team, weapons trained on the group. "Step away from the artifacts and surrender the anomalous entities." Marcus, unable to release his place in the circle, called out to Warren, "You don't understand what you're interrupting. This is the real containment protocol." "We have our orders, read," Warren replied coldly. "This site is being decommissioned. The assets are being relocated to a controlled environment." "Decommissioned," Thomas exclaimed in horror. "You can't. Do you have any idea what's beneath us?" Warren's expression remained impassive. "That's classified above your clearance, Griffith. The decision has been made at the highest levels. These creatures have outlived their usefulness. Modern technology will maintain whatever containment is necessary." As he spoke, more cracks opened in the floor, wider than before. Blue light pulsed like a heartbeat, and a sound like distant, distorted screaming rose from the depths. Joseph's chanting had reached a crescendo, the document at the center of the circle now floating inches above the ground, emanating light that pushed back against the sickly blue glow from below. "Last warning," Warren announced, signaling his men to take aim. In that moment, the largest of the night walkers, the one that had stood sentinel beside Joseph in the cave, broke from the circle and lunged toward Warren with supernatural speed. Shots rang out, echoing painfully in the cavern. The creature staggered but didn't fall, crashing into the cleanup team's front line and scattering them like bowling pins. Chaos erupted as more night walkers broke formation to defend the ritual. The humans in the circle, Marcus, Diana, Dr. Chen, James, and Mike, held their positions desperately, trying to maintain the energy flow that Joseph insisted was crucial. Through the mayhem, Marcus watched as Warren produced a small device from his tactical vest, a remote detonator. With a cold smile, he pressed the button. Multiple explosions rocked the cavern simultaneously. The cleanup team had placed charges throughout the chamber, intending to collapse it entirely. Massive chunks of rock began falling from the ceiling, crushing combatants on both sides. "Joseph!" Diana screamed as a boulder narrowly missed the old man. The ritual seemed on the verge of collapse when something remarkable happened. The document at the center of the circle expanded, its glow intensifying to brilliant white. The light spread outward, encompassing the entire stone formation and everyone connected to it. Within that radiance, time seemed to slow. The falling rocks hung suspended in midair. The gunfire became a distant, muffled popping. Joseph's voice alone carried clearly as he completed the ritual, adding a final phrase that sounded like both benediction and command. The light contracted suddenly, then exploded outward in a silent shockwave that passed through everything in the cavern. The cracks in the floor sealed themselves, the blue glow extinguished. The suspended rocks disappeared entirely, as if they had never existed. When the light faded, the cleanup team lay unconscious on the cavern floor. Only Warren remained standing, though he seemed frozen in place, eyes wide with incomprehension. "What? What did you do?" he whispered. Joseph, looking somehow younger and more vital than before, approached him calmly. "We renewed the true covenant, the one that predates your government and its short-sighted policies. The seal is restored, stronger than before." "But how?" Dr. Chen asked, looking around at the now stable cavern. "The document contained the original terms of guardianship," Joseph explained, "written in a language older than humanity. By activating it in the nexus point, we've reset the balance, but with a crucial difference." He turned to Warren, who remained paralyzed by some invisible force. "Those who would exploit or disturb the balance can no longer approach the sacred grounds. They will be redirected, their memories altered to protect what they cannot understand." "And the night walkers?" Marcus asked, noting that the creatures now stood calmly among them, no longer in their aggressive postures. "They remain the primary guardians," Joseph said, "but now they have willing human partners again. The need for unwilling transformations has ended." He looked pointedly at Diana, "though those who wish to join them may still do so, with full knowledge and consent." Diana glanced at the night walker that had once been her friend Maya, understanding dawning in her eyes. "And us?" James asked. "What happens to us now?" Joseph smiled enigmatically. "You've become part of the covenant. You'll remember everything, but find yourselves unable to share certain aspects with the uninitiated. Not through any magical compulsion, but through understanding of the necessity." Warren and his team began to stir, their expressions confused as if waking from a dream. "They'll remember none of this," Joseph explained. "To them, they responded to a routine environmental emergency that has now been resolved. They'll return to their duties with no memory of the night walkers, the ritual, or your involvement." Marcus watched as the cleanup team gathered their equipment, their movements mechanical, eyes vacant. They filed out of the cavern without a single glance at the night walkers standing in plain sight. "What about the missing persons?" Dr. Chen asked. "The previous transformations?" "Those already changed will remain as they are," Joseph replied sadly. "But from this night forward, the night walkers will find other ways to maintain their numbers. The covenant provides for this." As dawn approached, they emerged from behind the falls into a Yosemite Valley bathed in early morning light. The park seemed unchanged, yet Marcus sensed a fundamental difference in the energy of the place. a rightness that hadn't been there before. Park visitors would still come by the millions, oblivious to the ancient forces beneath their feet or the guardians watching from the shadows. But now, a new circle of human guardians would work alongside the night walkers, maintaining the balance openly among themselves while preserving the necessary secrecy from the wider world. Marcus gazed up at the massive granite faces of El Capitan and Half Dome, seeing them now not just as natural wonders, but as sentinels in their own right, parts of an ancient system designed to contain something beyond human comprehension. Diana joined him, her expression reflective. "What will you do now? Your FBI career is over," he finished for her. "But I think I might apply for a position with the Park Service. They seem to have some interesting opportunities in resource management." She smiled, understanding his meaning. The first guardian of the new covenant. As they walked toward the valley floor, Marcus felt eyes watching from the tree line. Not threatening now, but protective. The night walkers would continue their eternal vigil, but no longer alone. In the distance, park rangers were removing the temporary closure signs from the trailheads leading into what had once been restricted areas. Under the new covenant, these places would remain sacred, but not forbidden. Visitors would find themselves naturally avoiding certain locations during full moons, not through fear, but through a subtle influence that redirected their steps. The balance had been restored, the ancient pact renewed. And in the depths beneath Yosemite, something ancient and terrible returned to its slumber, securely sealed away by guardians both human and other, the night walkers of Yosemite. End.